Software settings, for anyone familiar with online backup programs such as Mozy or Carbonite, they come with certain folders already backed up, already set to back up, like the My Documents folder, the My Music, whatever. This basically what we've done with software settings, but we've given you some more flexibility and functionality behind it. You can generate as many software settings as you want. You can create one software setting to use with every one of your customers, or you can create a software setting for every one of your customers. And the idea being that you can install the software and not have to think about it again. Or if you need to add a folder, change the backup periods, you can do all of that through software settings. So you don't need to get onto the customer's machine every time you want to make a change. Bearing in mind that anyone using a software setting, any change you make will be reflected on their machine as well. Basically, as you can see, I've generated a bunch of them already. It's quicker to show you one that's already done, so we can just go through. But to create a new one, we'd click Add. You'll have a default one already created, so you would just click Modify or Add a new one. And basically, your software settings, you want to give it a description of what it's going to be used for. And then our next level down, so we have the ability to lock the front-end GUI completely from the customer being able to make any changes whatsoever. If we flip this switch to yes, the customer's user interface won't have any effect whatsoever on what gets backed up. The user will just set the installation and then close the software, tell the GUI not to run anymore, and you'll manage everything from the back end. If we leave it unlocked, we do give the customer the ability to make some changes. On a backup name, currently we don't need to set a backup name. There's only one backup job running, and it's called VOCB, but you can call it a different name if you'd like. Backup paths, we can tell it to use a precise, to back up an entire drive. We can tell it to back up a folder on a drive. We can use virtual paths and then separating everything with the pipe symbol. And the software will know to back up everything inside of those folders or that specific path, as long as it's not part of an exclusion filter. Inclusion and exclusion filters, exactly what they sound like. In this particular instance, I'm telling it that I want to back up these two folders, and if the customer selects a bunch of more folders, but they miss a .document file on the hard drive, I want it to automatically back up that document file, even if the customer hasn't selected that folder. Exclusion, you can tell it to exclude any extension. You can tell it to exclude paths like temporary internet file path. Everything separated with the pipe symbol. Our backup lock, so if we lock this, the customer can't make any changes to what gets backed up. By default, that's turned off, so if you don't have anything selected, it's automatically going to be unlocked. VSS enable and VSS lock, so that's your volume shadow copy. Enabling VSS allows you to back up open and locked files, and the VSS lock prevents the user from being able to turn off the VSS. Quota, we don't set quota by software setting anymore, so we leave this blank. We set that when we actually create the client itself. Options 2, the backup schedule lock. If we set the backup schedule lock, then we're going to create a backup schedule for the customer to use. A lot of your businesses are going to want to have a backup schedule predetermined and prevent their users from being able to turn off the backups. So we come in and we say today's date, starting at 8:30 a.m. I want this to run every single day at 8:30. Or if we come down to weekly, if we hold down Control, pardon me, we can multi-select, and now it'll run every Wednesday and Thursday at 8:30. You have the ability to run it once a month, every time the computer starts, or approximately every hour with the CDP. We'll just turn that back to daily. Our backup schedule policy status, it's a field that doesn't need to be adjusted, but you can if we just want to leave it on no. Our catch hour, Catch is if a backup is missed, it's the number of hours between the missing of the backup and the software re-logging into the back end. Will the backup run again? So if we set it so that if I miss a backup, but I connect within 8 hours, it's going to catch up and run that backup as soon as it connects. And I can turn that off and prevent the user from making any changes on the GUI to the actual to the catch. Our third options tab in software settings, we can throttle bandwidth at the software setting level. You can also throttle bandwidth at account, group, and client level. So we don't necessarily recommend setting it at throttling bandwidth at software setting. Changing the email notification level, you can disable email notifications to the users of this software setting. You can determine that they'll only receive emergency notifications, weekly notifications, or daily notifications. So it's up to you. This will be a global setting for anyone using this software setting. And you can lock down, prevent the user from changing the email notification level. Web access enabled. Web access is what allows the client to log into the back end through the user portal with their client alias and perform web restores. If you disable web access, they cannot perform web restores. If you enable web access, your user will be able to, end user will be able to log in and perform web restore. Hardware lock, basically we take a cookie of the registry and a couple of other functionalities in each individual machine, and we generate a unique ID for that machine. That unique ID is stored on the back end. If hardware lock is enabled, the customer will not be able to log into the back end with a client alias on a separate machine. It's a security functionality. This will prevent the user from being able to perform a restore if a machine goes completely down. They would have to first call you, and you would just need to reset the hardware verification, which is a click of a button. So we recommend that you leave hardware lock on. Software settings interval, you can leave this blank. This is just a number of seconds between when the actual software logs into the back end and checks for changes made to the software setting. And our CPU throttle, this can be set at the software setting level. We would recommend that you only do this on individual clients that might be running slower processors or have a lot of processes running in the background and we're eating up bandwidth, eating up the CPU. You can come in and create a software setting where you throttle the bandwidth for that particular client. And that's the software setting.